Did you know that Ukraine is the largest country in terms of area among these completely located in Europe? It is known for its churches, Black Sea resorts and forested mountains. It borders Romania, Moldova, Hungary, Slovakia, Poland, and in the north with Belarus and Russia. And what do you think? Which of the neighbors attacked Ukraine? Maybe Romania? It has a territorial dispute, doesn't it? Or perhaps Hungary, which has been handing out passports to Ukrainian citizens? No? Yes, exactly. How could I forget? The largest country in terms of area, stretching 10,000 kilometers from east to west, and this, by the way, is a quarter of the circumference of the Earth at the equator. It decided that its lands are already densely populated and urgently need to expand. And strictly to the west. Yes. It was a northern neighbor who decided to attack Ukraine on February 24, 2022. A number of cities were shelled overnight. In just one night, dozens of long-range cruise missiles were fired. A cruise missile can fly with an arbitrary course, including along a winding trajectory, which creates difficulties for the enemy's missile defense system, and at the same time at low altitude with enveloping the terrain. And also, long before this terrible night, the world and American media were full of headlines about the imminent invasion. The global population of Ukraine, as well as me, didn't take them seriously. Well, would you believe it? Tell me honestly, if, let's say, you were told that Canada is about to attack the United States, or say Finland is to attack Norway, or France and Poland? No? The same thing here. The Ukrainians rather believed in the second coming of Christ than in the attack of the Big Brother. By the way, have you heard that Ukraine was supposed to be captured in just 3 days? Yes, just 3 days. At least these were the plans of the Russian leadership. Of course, the goal was Kiev, but the approaches to it lay through satellite cities. Russian soldiers committed atrocities in them with particular cruelty. One of them was Bucha. Bucha is a small town in the suburbs of Kiev, having received a noticeable development over the past decade before the war. Bucha looked more like one of the suburbs of the capital rather than a provincial settlement, and infrastructure and clean air increasingly forced people to choose this cozy city rather than the noisy metropolis in search of housing. But let's get back to the sad events. On February 28th, Ukrainian armed formations and citizens didn't let Russian invaders into Bucha, and only on March 31st the city was liberated from the Russian army. Yes, for a whole month the city was under the flag of a foreign state, and its inhabitants remained in their homes. Signs of Russian war crimes were revealed, in particular the massacre of the civilian population. I want to dedicate one side of the axe to the city of Bucha and its inhabitants. On the second side, I want to make an inscription that every Ukrainian now knows and pronounced with pride, no matter what language they speak and when they celebrate Christmas, in December or January. Now I will try to immerse you in the situation. So, the war has already begun. Overnight rockets were fired at almost all major cities in the country. Russia attacked Ukraine on all fronts, including the sea. There is a Ukrainian island in the Black Sea, which is called Zmyny, Snake Island. On the island, there is a military unit with Ukrainian border guards, because it is a border island. Well, here comes another moment of threat to the Russian ship at the time of the attack. Now, imagine You are sitting like this in the radio room of a military unit. There is nowhere to run. You are on an island. There is no point in waiting for military assistance. The Russian army surrounds you. Then, the enemy's call is heard over the radio.
Zminy Island. I am a Russian warship. I suggest you lay down your arms and surrender to avoid bloodshed and unjustified victims. Otherwise, a bombing and assault strike will be inflicted on you. How did you copy? Over.
I remind you, you are surrounded, and now your lord and savior probably can only be this fucking Russian warship, which here and now decides to let you live or burn in a missile attack. Well, what will you do? There are no many options. As someone says, drop dead or die.
Russian warship, go fuck yourself.
These words immediately became an internet meme. And that brave guy could not even imagine what he did for every Ukrainian. But in order to make an engraving, I first need to perform a simpler action. I will draw a life-size sketch. To do this, I will circle the axe itself on paper. I hope you have already understood that two different sides of the axe are dedicated to different events. Also, they are connected by the war in Ukraine, Bucha, and the Russian warship Go Fuck. What options would you choose? Write in the comments. Maybe your version will be the topic of my next video. Yes, I know. This is a hackneyed phrase, and you probably thought, well, here is that cheap trick again. He is expecting me to rise his video in charts. Yes and no. Firstly, I still need topics for my next works. And secondly, my channel also needs your comments. So, don't whine. If the video is decent, then leave a comment. I hope I explained myself clearly. Now, let's get down to work. To come up with the sketch itself is still a task, despite the fact that these are familiar words to everyone, but compiling them into a specific composition still requires some effort. The drawing is ready. Now, let's carefully transfer it to the axe. For this, I use a Dremel engraving machine. Dremel engraver is a percussion type of tool. It works like a small jackhammer, and if earlier I used it only for applying background, now I have adapted and can even simulate the work of a pneumatic engraver, drawing the contours and outlines of the main objects and inscriptions. I am cutting a groove in the metal surface. Perhaps it would be worth leaving more shots of the work with the engraving machine. After all, it took me 2 full days to do it. But the wonders of editing magic left you with only a couple of shots from the workshop. Now that we have the pattern on both sides, let's clean up the surface. I want to give it volume. Someone uses black paint for this, others etch with ferric chloride, but I chose a polishing paste from a well-known Chinese manufacturer. Just kidding, I don't understand any word in these letters. It may be written here to use it only with plastic, but I was encouraged by the title Diamond Paste. I use a mini felt nozzle and polish every inch of the surface. Now we can move on to the handle. As you can see, there are plenty to choose from. I make these blanks in advance and constantly store them in a dry form, periodically drying them in such a lighter portable frame, which is covered with insulation on almost all sides, and there is a convector installed inside. A very fireproof design, isn't it? Write what you think about it in the comments. Well, you understand me. This allows you to achieve a minimum moisture content of the wood, which in turn makes the handle fit into the axe as tight as possible. After all, the humidity of the surrounding space is always higher and is within 40%, while the humidity of the wood itself, in my frame, is less than 4%. This way, I take an extremely dry handle, quickly put an axe on it, drive in wooden wedges, and that is it. Now I am not worried that the handle will dry out and the axe head will loosen. I also draw a pattern on the handle. First work with a pencil. I mark the boundaries of the future ornament. It is important to choose not only the appropriate style, but also the area of the applied pattern. I heard a proverb: a sense of proportion is a gift from the gods. Well, this is my life credo. I think about it every time when I shave off all the hair on my head. Well, after that we will do woodwork. I conceived a pattern similar to leather binding. Since then I will use leather as well. Have you seen such a tool? Do you know what it is? It is a checkering tool. It is used for gunstock carving, for grooves making. I think that you have already seen how beautiful the geometric pattern made with this cutter looks. The grooves are cut under a 60-degree angle, sometimes 90-degree, but I use it to give the contour and outline of the area which I will fill with braided carvings. Well, this is just a mini chisel, which I picked up so that the wound exactly fits the size of the knocked out squares between the braided stripes. Yes, there are enough nozzles for a Dremel rotary tool, but as usual I use only a few on a specific pattern. One of them has a cylindrical shape and is coated with diamonds. The process isn't fast, but with music everything will go more fun. I will turn it on for you. I must say that this weaving isn't easy for me. But the result should justify 2 days of work. This nozzle needs no introduction. A mini sandpaper. And this nozzle with a reverse conical shape is designed for metal carving. And, of course, it gnaws wood, as my wife gnaws me when I drink all my pay. In especially difficult places, such a mini brass brush cleans and polishes the convolutions of the pattern well. But this applies to hardwoods, like an axe handle. Here, a horn beam is used. So, the pattern is ready. Now you need to give the wood a leather color. For this, I use an alcohol-based stain. I will apply several layers. It is perfectly absorbed into the wood and penetrates deep into its structure, staining not only the surface. Also, you need to constantly monitor that there are no dried streaks that will immediately expose you as an animator. Yeah, it could be applied with a spray gun, and yeah, it makes the coating uniform. But due to the volatility of the stain, it does not penetrate as deeply into the wood as when applied with a brush, and it dries up even when approaching the surface, creating only a thin dyed film. After the stain, the pile inevitably rises. And what should be done in this case? That's right, fine-grained sanding paper and gentle movements will make the surface smooth again. We repeat the procedure until after the next applications of the stain, the pile no longer rises. Then, for the general concept, I use leather or rather vegetable tanned leather. This is one of the most expensive raw leathers, but it isn't yet entirely ready for use. Also, it was pre-dyed and then sewn myself. First, using a fork punch tool, I make holes for stitching. Have you seen such things? Can you guess what it is? Once upon a time, I saw someone in a video with similar products, and my fingers immediately burst into tears. Indeed, before that, more than once they were almost rubbed to the blood with threads at the moment of constant tightening of the two halves to be sewn together. So, I decided to do the same for myself. My hand said "thanks me", and I thank you, man from the video. I don't remember you, but your idea is great. My hands love you. So, now we clean the place where the leather will be fixed. I am peeling off a layer of coating and oil. By the way, notice how deep the dye has penetrated into the structure of the wood. Apply glue to the handle and leather and wait 10 or 15 minutes. This is a contact adhesive. It's a pleasure to work with it. It's predictable and tightly fixes the leather on the handle. Only it is painfully smelly. It is better to use a respirator or fan, or better both of them. I roll with the help of such a roller. I bought it on the Lee Valley website, article number 125535. On holidays and Sundays they have promotions and you will be given a 99% discount using the Russian Warship F promo code. Lee Valley store, contact my agent. You need to discuss the terms of the advertising contract. So that I can pull the leather through them with a strong nylon thread. And next, sew. Where there is double layer leather, you have to use a special blunt awl to widen the hole. This happens when the hole is very narrow. Of course, these covers look complex and decorative, but they are rooted in a purely utilitarian purpose – to protect the axe handle from accidental misses during impacts. So, These overlays are placed near the axe blade. The editing magic saved you from the long contemplation of attaching the second part of the leather cover. But you can be sure that it sits there just as securely as the first one. It's a leather wax. It's called Sava Leathercraft Light Leather Balm Wax Treatment and Conditioner 90-gram Leather Mob Japan Glue Treatment Adhesives. What? Didn't it need to be read in full? Sava company, contact my agent. Yes, understand that the topic of working with leather isn't disclosed. Have patience, you will see it all in the next videos. After, I impregnate it with oil, more precisely with linseed drying oil. Yes, I agree, it doesn't sound as pretentious as oil or wax impregnation, but believe me, drying oil penetrates the wood better, creating a strong coating, especially since I cooked it myself. The phrase Russian warship go fuck yourself has been actively used since February 24, 2022 in various fields: media, culture, art, mass actions, as well as widely used by officials, artists and politicians. Now you can easily buy not only a t-shirt, but almost any accessories with this answer. Even the postage stamp Russian warship go was put into circulation on April 12. The demand for it was just crazy. People stood in kilometer-long queues at the post offices to buy a stamp. These words have become a kind of symbol of resistance to Russian military aggression. Bucha is a city that heroically defended this unequal battle, alas not only at the cost of our army, but also at the cost of ordinary citizens. Civilians who just yesterday were making plans for the future, going to work and taking their children to school, and someone might have been planning a vacation. From the screens, this information sounds plain, just words, and each life looks like just another number in a cold statistic. But stop for a moment and think: in a peaceful city, in the center of Europe, in 2022, these people were slaughtered like cattle on a farm. They were shot in the head with their hands tied behind their backs, with no chance to leave their city, to escape and survive. What was he driving by, the Russian soldier? What was he thinking? Not just pulling the trigger and releasing a soulless bullet from the muzzle of his machine gun. No. This is completely different. This is an army elbow deep in blood, unwashable and unreasonable, like the memory of the Ukrainian people. I am a small person whose life is as short as a moment, but I want the voices of these people to remain forever in metal.
Denzel, what can you say about the channel Can All on YouTube? Have you watched the latest episode?
Well, of course I look. It's not even discussed. I watch my wife with me and also all our children.
Very interesting video, even for me as a girl.
Long story short, like and subscribe. Understood me? And tell all your colleagues at work.